This morning, we wanted to kick us off with a discussion about workforce development and education.
Wildland Fire creates such hardworking, creative, innovative people, and they deserve good workforce development. And I'm passionate about trying to find ways to not only make them efficient at their jobs, but I think that we have an opportunity to help people live their best lives when we create a system that supports them both financially and also personally as they learn about themselves and learn how to do wonderful and powerful things for our world with the use of fire.
Our approach to workforce development is really focused on reconnecting Indigenous young people to their lands, the culturally significant landscape, while also preparing them for careers in many different fields in cultural and natural resource protection. And it's a really powerful experience when young folks reconnect with the land and get to see these places and spaces that are a part of their teachings, their prayers, their songs that they've heard about through their elders and their knowledge keepers, but haven't actually been able to go out there and visit those places and spaces. And when they're also continuing the legacy of their ancestors of managing those landscapes, it's a really, really powerful experience. So it's a lot focused on success in the Western paradigm through jobs and careers, but also the cultural connection, reconnection to these important places and spaces.
So I'm coming at this lens, working with NWCG for 20 plus years as a committee chair, developing training standards and guides for the field. So just giving you a little bit of history about NWCG, 1976 is when it was stood up. It was for the 5 federal agencies. It was to provide consistency, continuity, efficiency for training standards and guidance and qualifications. So that system worked. That's how all the training was rolled out for anybody that was coming in as a firefighter. So then as we go through the 2000s, we had more fatality fires, more epic fire seasons, more requirements, more mandates on people who are working in the field to either participate in training, more procedures and more policies to obtain the training or qualifications in the field. So there isn't as much time for people in the field to actually provide that SME workload, the contributions to committees to provide oversight of standards and guides. Still the same model that was developed in 1976 was in the 2000s. Things were changing. So now when you fast forward to where we're at right now, same model, 1976 to 2024. How many things do we have that are 48 years old developed that has not changed over time? And so that's kind of where we're at.
So we have workforce development systems, right? Tammy talked about NWCG as the biggest piece of that system. It's based on classrooms and certificates and task books. But there's a lot more to the development system, right? There's the burgeoning state qualification systems that are different in every state, right? So that's another piece. There's the non-Fed, non-NWCG, non-state part of the system. It's all part of what is evolving very rapidly. And Tammy talked about how the NWCG system hasn't really evolved since the early 2000s. It's also a system based on untrained trainers. I am interested in talking to you all about what a system that's based on experiential training looks like, and it builds communication skills, relationship building skills, critical thinking skills. How can we adapt to changing conditions the day of a burn, the day of a fire, throughout an incident, over time as conditions change? I think we should use the workforce development and training program, the system, and build it more inclusively of non-feds, non-state entities, make it for everyone, reinforce the experiential part of it, and create a fire culture where in 10 years, in 20 years, we're talking about new problems, and we're able to adapt and evolve to those more quickly.
Not everybody in this business intends to be only on the fire line. And even if you are on the fire line, how much longer can you maintain that in your life? It's not like a long-term thing for everybody. We have these other parts of wildland fire professional development that are very important. with education and experience. And as we work to build our wildland fire professionals, everybody has a contribution within this framework to support the development of these folks, whether that's inside or outside of the NWCG system. So a concept that I like to think about a lot, and that we have a session coming up on after this, is the academic industrial alignment. Alignment, if you're not familiar with the concept, I'm sure you might be, but here we are anyway. You take two aspects, slope and wind. By themselves, they don't make fire go much faster, but together, they 10x fire's rates of spread and flame lengths. If you take some expertise within teaching or mentoring, and you take expertise with field operations or with ecology or with whatever, and you put those things together, you have so much more impact.
And really, working to build up not just the capacity, but also looking for those opportunities for capacity retention. That's one of the, as we work with our tribal partners, that's one of the main focuses is we don't want to train up all of our young people, but not have the opportunities for them locally. So it's great that they go and work with the Forest Service. It's great that they go and work with the Park Service and other federal agencies, but we also have that real need within our tribal communities to have our young people stay and work locally. So it's really looking at all of those different opportunities and providing them that training, that on-the-ground experience, those connections and networks for them to be successful, having multiple avenues for that success. Again, working with those tribal programs, as I mentioned, that capacity retention is huge. And we want to work with our tribal communities to help train the workforce to come in and help manage their lands and work alongside our federal agency partners. I mentioned this in why I'm passionate, but reconnecting Indigenous young people to the land is huge, especially in this era and age of technology. A lot of our young folks haven't had the opportunity to grow up as we did, where we spent a lot of time just out on the landscape, playing, learning, and that's really what a big focus of our program is to reconnect our young folks to those landscapes. Pathways to careers is huge too. That's really what we're looking to do.
We did a needs assessment in Arizona, looking at workforce development just recently for the Arizona Wildfire Initiative. And one of the main things that came out of that was that students are coming out with the right book learning. The book learning's there. What's not there all the time is the soft skills and the experiential skills. And that's because universities are not designed well to be able to do that kind of work. And if you want to talk about a larger and more diverse workforce, I've got students that are coming in from all sorts of places with all sorts of backgrounds, getting their education, just dying to get into the system. And we make it kind of hard for them to get into the system because wildfire academies are during school. I get that they have to be out of the fire season, but is there some kind of compromise there? There's other things like that I think we could really think about how to take these two parallel tracks and get them merged together better. So the Fire Science Exchange Networks is another place where that education and training piece comes together, because the materials being created there are also being distributed through trainings and through educational programs. So we have some really great ways that we've been creative to try and get around the fact that our two systems aren't really working directly together right now, but I think we have a ways to go, but I see a lot of positive movement, and I think things are starting to come together on that front.
And building on that, speaking about the partnerships and the web, programs like ours really rely on our partners. We're seeing a lot more focus, especially from our federal agencies, on the training side. For so long, it's been on project implementation, which is great for the experience side of the thing, but then we're looking for how do we pay for the training.
Teaching is super hard, really stressful, takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of humility, and it's something that is never finished. And so I think starting off to solve that is just build the expectation that developing people to work within a training system is important. But this is not new information. We know how to teach people, or it is known that information exists. We just have an opportunity to tap into it.
It's really discouraging to try to complete that task book when knowing you're signed up for that trainee priority list, within the forest or whatever, but you're always on the bottom because you're not agency. I know individuals where they've had to reopen those task books. They were 1 or 2 signatures away from being signed off, but since they're, again, not part of agency, and it just kind of seems that, in agencies just kind of are prioritizing themselves over those other individuals that would like to complete those task books and that are capable of performing those same tasks.
Yes. You're absolutely right. There's a problem in the system. I don't have any answers. Does anyone else have anything that is helpful to the group? We can just commiserate with you.
So that would be one of those things where we need partnership to dig in on that. You're certainly not alone in that frustration. I think sometimes we get to a barrier within the system that we know, and we haven't looked outside of that to see if there's more opportunities. And I think that rather than maybe pushing through and trying to get through that barrier within the current system, it might be moving outside of that system to work with more creative and open-minded partners to get those tasks completed.
My dream would be to get rid of every other class. Be more efficient with the class work that we are prescribing, put more focus on the experiential learning. That would be my dream.
Right now, the curriculums are now tiered underneath those subcommittees to provide that oversight. So there is consistency and continuity from the 190 to the 590 courses. You're not getting duplicative information and so on. With that said, that is not the same model for all of the other courses. That committee has been very proactive and out in front, pushing the envelope on a lot of things. So then when you take, and this is part of the system that is broken within NWCG. When you take changes such as the safe separation distance, you have new research that's come out, not even necessarily new cutting edge research. There is reluctancy to formalize that and accept that as a standard within the training system. And so they're not accepting it. So new research is coming out that is proven to help with decision making and safety concerns on the ground. NWCG is reluctant to accept it. So research is taking different pathways to get this in the hands of the people, but it's not being formalized within the training. I would say pushing feedback, in addition to the committees, pushing feedback through your conduits, whether it's fire directors, whether it's sending those emails and feedbacks into some of their blanket feedback forms. They need to hear it. They need to hear it from people who are having these challenges beyond just the committee chairs. Because trust me, we are the squeaky wheels when we continue to go back. And so I would say have a voice, be active, and push that feedback in, because otherwise it's not going to change.
What are you guys seeing in the Southwest states to build capacity for fire outside of that system? So, for example, in California, they now have their own state certified program, right? So are you guys seeing things emerging that are outside of that system?
Yeah, so in New Mexico, I can speak for the New Mexico Prescribed Fire Act of 2021. So it was passed, and it's currently in a rollout phase. So that's something that me as a practitioner in New Mexico, I'm really excited about leaning into, particularly on those private non-federal lands as a pathway that is still robust, but is not NWCG.
In Arizona, the Southwest Fire Science Consortium actually helped Arizona Prescribed Fire Council get up and running, and it woefully flailed for a while and then went away. And now there's an effort by the state with our new state forester to get that up and running again, so that's exciting to see.
On the idea of starting stuff, I just want to make sure that you're all clear that if you've got an idea about something that needs done, guess what you can do? You can do it. So don't be afraid. Don't think you're too small or too insignificant to start something big and powerful. Every one of you can do that.
And I guess I would like to add, I think everybody has said partnerships is the key. You know, fire knows no boundaries. There is not one way to solve the problem. So whether you're federal, state, NGO, tribal, it's collectively truly going to be all hands, all lands to help solve the problem of workforce development, training, and onward for capacity and wildfire management as a system. And so collectively, when you look around the room, every one of you has a role that you can play, whether it's brainstorming, coming up with an idea and leveraging that capacity and capability with your neighbor that may not work for the same group that you work for. That's where the power is at. Think outside the box, be strategic, think big.
One of the things that I've seen now with the new Wildland Fire series is the requirement for education has been taken away, and I'm speaking more from the fuel side than from the suppression side. And because of that, I see a gap potentially occurring there with that skill set that people need to understanding why they're doing what they're doing out there when they do the fuel treatments. You know, technically it's not hard to put a tree on the ground, but you need to know why you're doing it.
Part of that is accessibility of the education and the expense of the education. So from the education standpoint, I think that's our imperative, to make sure that what we are providing is right timed, right sized, right priced. So education being pinned is the reason why we don't have a workforce, and not looking at our HR problems or our other problems that might be contributing as much or more than an education requirement within a system. And that's difficult to work around. That's difficult to convince those folks making those decisions that education isn't the one that's restricting their employee pool.
Yeah, building on that, accessibility and approachability is key. And education doesn't only happen in the classroom. And we talk so much about the importance of experience. If we can innovate, if we can get these broad partnerships where we have colleges and universities working with federal agencies, working with tribes, working with NGOs, to innovate what that education looks like, it's going to open up the door. Speaking about the accessibility and approachability, not everybody wants to go into the classroom, or they don't necessarily see themselves being successful in that classroom, but we can bring that classroom out into the field and really expand upon the work that we're doing, and provide that education, and it's more meaningful.
You know, I do wish 401 was implemented in a completely different way than it was. I think it would have gone a lot further, and it would have shown a lot more importance. People shouldn't be losing their jobs because they don't have an educational requirement by a certain date, but people coming up the ladder should be required to have those requirements. And the number of people that have come back to me, we have a professional online program for 24 credits that was in response to 401, and the number of folks that come back to me from that program and say, I now understand why I do what I do and how I can do it better. And if I don't know how to do it better, I know where to go look for information now. And I just don't see in the complicated, uncertain future with climate change and having to try out-of-the-box things, how we can't have critical thinkers that have some sort of education being the folks putting fire on our landscape. It's really hard for me to envision that.